Hello everyone, this is Atman Nityananda and his online spiritual academy, which I call Advaita Atma Yoga Academy. Today I would like to speak about ignorance and knowledge. What is ignorance? What is knowledge? They are two very important concepts related to spiritual life and practice and the purpose of life. What is ignorance? It is identifying ourselves with the physical structure, physical body, mind, intellect, person, and ego. This is ignorance. Identification with the physical body, the mind, intellect, ego, and person is ignorance. To take ourselves to be this physical body, mind, me entity is ignorance. To ignore that we are essentially our identity is consciousness is ignorance. So ignorance has two, we could say, aspects: identification with the physical structure, mind, intellect, ego, and person, and ignorance of our essential nature, which is what we really are. This is ignorance. And what is knowledge? Of course, there are many kinds of knowledge of forms, physical forms, and knowledge of psychological forms. But the supreme knowledge is the knowledge of the self. What is the self? It's not an entity. It is not a form. It is consciousness itself. It is formless existence and consciousness itself. So our self is not a form. It's not an physical, energetic, or mental or emotional formation. It is formless beyond description. It is pure awareness or consciousness. It is the light of consciousness that enables us to be conscious of the body, the mind, the thoughts, emotions, and the external reality or illusory reality. So our identity, our self in the full meaning of the word is consciousness, existence, unlimited existence, unlimited consciousness, which is experienced in us as a silent space of consciousness, or as a silent space, as a still, immovable, and changeless presence. It is this silent space, it is the always present background of all other experiences, whether they are sensory experiences or psychological experiences or energetic experiences. Always there is a background. As in our mobile, in our cell phone, there is this screen on which all images appear. Similarly, there is a screen, but it is an empty screen, a silent, empty screen, a silent space in which all forms appear. Physical forms, including our physical body, and psychological forms. Our thoughts, emotions, imagination, fantasies, desires, all these psychological formations appear in this empty, silent space of consciousness. And this is what we are. It is always here and now present in us and in our experience. But because we live focused in the external reality, on the external reality, and we identify with what we perceive through the senses, and we identify with the physical body, which is also a perception, a physical sensory perception. That means that our whole attention, it is attached to what we perceive through the senses, and is attached to the mind, and also attached to the psychological formations, emotions, and thoughts, most of all. So there is no free attention to enable us, to allow us be aware of our essential nature. Living identified with the physical forms, with the physical form, with the external forms, and the psychological forms is ignorance. Not realizing, not being aware that we are this silent space of consciousness is ignorance. The realization of this silent space of consciousness is knowledge. The realization that we can realize, we can become aware of this silent space of consciousness, but this is not realization. It is only recognition of this silent, still space within us. But realization or awakening is to realize that we are this silent space of consciousness. This is also awakening. Realization, awakening is this, mean the same thing, that we are aware that we are this silent, empty space of consciousness and not this physical body, mind, person. And this is knowledge. This is the supreme knowledge. Of course, there is knowledge of sense objects, sensory objects, and psychological forms. We know them, we are aware of them, or we understand them, but this is a knowledge based in the subject-object reality, duality perception. I, me, as the subject, I perceive something. But self-knowledge is this state of being aware of myself. There is no duality, because there is no some other entity that is aware of something different than it. It is the consciousness in us that becomes aware of itself. So self-realization, it is not that we as an ego realize that we are consciousness, that the ego is consciousness, that this body, mind, me entity is consciousness. No, it is the realization that the consciousness is what we are, that consciousness is what we are. Not we are as a body, me. Our nature, our identity, our self is consciousness itself. And in this consciousness, this body, mind, me, person appears. And of course, all the external forms, expressions of life appear. The realization and the abundance in the silent space of consciousness is knowledge. Abiding constantly in consciousness is knowledge. It is self-knowledge. But because this silent space of consciousness, it is the universal consciousness itself. So by knowing ourselves in the deepest meaning of the word, we know God, what we call God. Because God is not a person, it is not an entity, it is formless existence and consciousness. And this formless existence and consciousness expresses in every human being and other beings as well. So this seemingly individual consciousness that is our self, our deepest self, it is universal the universal consciousness itself, what we call God or spirit or Brahman in Sanskrit, or Tao or Allah. It doesn't matter what name we give to this highest principle of life. Knowing, realizing that we are this is knowledge. We are this consciousness, which is universal and expresses itself through all beings. This is knowledge. Identifying ourselves with the physical body, the mind, the intellect, person, and ego is ignorance. And this ignorance also not realizing that we are this formless existence and consciousness. And how this ignorance expresses itself in us as rajas and tamas qualities, and as the ego. The ego itself in us and the rajas and tamas qualities, it is the manifestation of ignorance in us. It is these rajas and tamas qualities and the ego itself that prevent us from realizing that we are consciousness. And we live in this state we call forgetfulness or self-forgetfulness. We think that we are a body, mind, me person, and we live only mostly in the external reality and partially in the internal reality. Of course, we are aware of our emotions and thoughts, but we are not fully aware of them. We don't know really what is happening in us. We have a very abstract knowledge about thoughts, emotions. What are their cause or their effects? And we cannot resist identification. We cannot stop identifying. It's not easy, at least, to stop identifying ourselves with these mental, emotional formations. We become those formations, these formations. So ignorance is living as a body, mind, me person in an external world and ignoring that we are consciousness, that I am consciousness, formless existence and consciousness. This is ignorance. And knowledge is the realization that the consciousness is what I really am. And this consciousness is divine and universal. It's not something that pertains to me only. It is not my personal, how to say, that is something personal, something individual. Appears to be individual, this consciousness, because of the apparent identification of consciousness with the body, mind, me, person. There is not a real identification. It is an apparent. That's why this identification from the body, the mind, and me, it is possible. Because it's not a real, a true identification. It is only an illusory identification with the body and mind and person and this sense of I identified with the body. So the whole process of yoga, of self-knowledge, of spirituality, of non-duality is to realize our true nature and stop identifying ourselves with the instruments of life. Instruments are the body, the vital energy, the emotional mind, the thinking mind, the intellect, the inner mind or subconscious mind, and the ego. They are the instruments through which consciousness expresses itself. So the whole process is of spirituality or non-duality or yoga or whatever. It is to stop identifying ourselves with the instruments and realize the principle that has created these instruments and expresses itself through these instruments. And this is what we call self-realization. Of course, self-realization, we can say that the moment we realize that we are consciousness, it is that consciousness is our true self. It is self-realization. But it is not sense-realization in the fullest meaning of the word. This state of self-awareness, of self-realization, it is total or complete when the ego and all its tendencies, desires, and habits and passions are dissolved totally and forever. When the ego dissolves totally, then we establish ourselves in consciousness and we live in consciousness as consciousness. And there is not something that can distract us from this union or this abundance as consciousness, in consciousness as consciousness, because it is the ego that creates distractions and hinders us to remain constantly aware of this peaceful and blissful and free consciousness. because I have forgotten to say that consciousness, the consciousness we are, it is also existence, formless existence, but it's also ananda, freedom, peace, plenitude, beauty. The moment our mind and attention, it is fully absorbed in this empty space of consciousness, we experience freedom and plenitude. There is no suffering anymore. Suffering is impossible in consciousness. Suffering is created by the mind, but not by the mind. It's not quite correct. By the mind, which is conditioned by egoistic tendencies. Because when the mind is free from tendencies, assumes its sattvic state, and remains calm, serene, transparent, and rests in consciousness naturally. It is the conditioned mind that creates suffering to us. In reality, it is all egoistic tendencies that create suffering to us in the form of desire, attachment, greed, fear, insecurity, anxiety, anger, hatred, jealousy, avarice. All these tendencies are what cause to us suffering. And when we liberate our mind totally from these tendencies, we cannot experience any more suffering. I mean, psychological suffering, because physical suffering is inevitable. Pain, physical pain is inevitable, does not depend on us. But psychological suffering, we can free ourselves from psychological suffering. How? By dissolving, by eliminating all egoistic tendencies and habits and programming, all conditioning. When our mind is pure, luminous, and rests in consciousness, in the formless space of consciousness, we experience peace, plenitude, freedom, and beauty. This is the purpose of life. We have been born in this physical body, and we live in this physical realm of life dimension to realize that we are consciousness. As body, mind, persons, individuals, we are instruments of consciousness. But at the same time, we are this consciousness that has created these instruments. This is the game of life. And as long as we identify ourselves with the physical body and realm in general, we have to suffer. And ignorance also is the cause of various illusions. One of them, of the most important, is that we seek fulfillment and happiness in the external world. This is also ignorance. The sensory experiences and the achievements of life cannot make us really happy. We cannot attain everlasting happiness. We experience happiness. There is no doubt about this. But this is another subject to delve in deep in it, to understand that this happiness also comes from within, even at those moments that we experience happiness because of the fulfillment of a desire. This happiness comes from within. There is no happiness at all to the external reality, to the experience of the sense objects. There is no happiness at all. Always happiness has to do with the sattva quality of life, which is the luminous, harmonious, transparent, diaphanous quality of life. It is happiness itself. And also because we connect with the source of happiness, and which is bliss itself, a superior state of happiness, we could say, which is also freedom and peace and plenitude. a complete there is complete contentment. We don't want nothing. In reality, we don't exist in this state of total union with consciousness. There is only consciousness experiencing itself. This is self-realization. This is liberation. This is enlightenment. This is the purpose we have taken this physical body, or it has been given to us. In reality, we as consciousness appear as this physical body entity, physical body mind entity, to make this inner journey, to undergo this inner journey, this process, spiritual process, to realize that we are the consciousness, the universal consciousness that is the source of our life. And it is embodiment of peace, plenitude, and bliss. So this is what I wanted to share with you about ignorance and knowledge. And this is one of the subjects I present in my online course. I call it Inner Transformation and Awakening of Consciousness. To overcome ignorance, to get rid of ignorance, and get knowledge of our true or our essential divine nature, it is the center of spiritual life and practice, or the center of self-knowledge, of yoga, of any traditional spiritual path. To get rid of ignorance, that means identification with the physical body and mind and ego, and realize that we are the always free, peaceful, and blissful consciousness, which is also existence eternal, beyond time, timeless. We exist forever in a timeless now. So I invite you, all those of you that are interested or aspire for freedom and peace and plenitude and truth, to join me in this online course I call Inner Transformation and Awakening of Consciousness. A transformation of our mind, the heart, intellect, subconscious mind, transformation of energy, sexual energy, and awakening to our true nature, to realize that we are consciousness and live moment to moment in conscious union with this essential divine essence. This is what I want to share with you. I wish you peace, love, and light in your life. And I repeat, I invite you to join me in this very comprehensive course that will help you understand all essential fundamental concepts and subjects related to spiritual life and practice systematically to realize your true nature and be free from all kinds of limitations related, of course, to the mind, intellect, and subconscious mind. I wish you peace, love, and light. Namaste.